You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories, controversies and issues.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
It's 5 times the opinion, 5 times the debate, and 5 times the fun. The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You could wink at the end. I can't Britain's wink, listening.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Let's get you up to date with the latest headlines. We'll start with some breaking news. The Conservative MP Scott Benton has had the party whip suspended after being filmed offering to help gambling industry lobbyists in exchange for financial reward. An undercover sting by the Times newspaper revealed Mr Benton being prepared to leak market-sensitive information to an investment fund and to ask parliamentary questions on its behalf in breach of parliamentary lobbying rules. Mr Benton referred himself to the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards. The SNP's former chief executive, Peter Murrell, has been released without charge pending further investigation. He was arrested earlier while police searched the home he shares with his wife, Nicola Sturgeon, along with the party headquarters. It is part of a probe into the SNP's finances, including £600,000 set aside for the independence campaign. Ms Sturgeon has insisted she had no prior knowledge of police plans or intentions ahead of her shock resignation in February and says she will fully cooperate with the investigation. The government is set to clash with a Conservative MP and council in Dorset, along with human rights groups, as a result of plans to house asylum seekers on a giant barge. The Home Office says the Bibby Stockholm, which is set to take up to 500 migrants for at least 18 months, will be cheaper than hotels. However, the Tory MP for South Dorset and the local Conservative council have pledged to pursue legal challenges to prevent it. Amnesty International has dismissed it as political theatre to obscure the government's mismanagement of the asylum system. However, the Prime Minister has defended the plans.
We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today. That's going to save the taxpayer money, reduce pressure on hotels.
21 people have been convicted for their role in the biggest child sex abuse cases ever investigated by West Midlands Police. The abusers committed the offences against 7 children up to the age of 12 over almost a decade in the Walsall and Wolverhampton areas. After several trials, the last of which concluded this month, 13 people have now been jailed with sentences up to and including life in prison. 4 others are yet to be sentenced. Sir Keir Starmer has promised to introduce specialist rape courts if Labour wins the next election. Government analysis shows the number of rape survivors dropping their case has more than doubled since 2015. Labour's pledge comes amid record backlogs in the courts, meaning victims face an average 3-year wait for justice. Sir Keir says the state of the justice system under the Conservatives is a national scandal. TV, online, DAB Plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle. And joining me tonight are the two best comedians that the budget could buy. We've got Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. How are you both? Happy? Not happy at that comment, Nick?
Happy about it. No.
Yeah, you're in fact very grumpy.
All the budget went on the chairs.
It did go on the chair. These are beautiful chairs, but unfortunately we can't see them. How are you, Josh?
I'm good. Today is I've been cooking all day. It's Pesach, Passover today. So I've just come from my big family meal.
Are you a good cook? I think you'd have to be with all those kids.
Yes, but then because you have to cook so many different meals. But this one, they just get what I cooked, and I was like, just be grateful we're not slaves anymore in Egypt.
Very nice message there from Josh. Well, we're going to be having a look at Thursday's newspapers. We're going to start with the front pages. The Daily Mail is leading with a question. Is this the real reason why Sturgeon walked out? And this is the police turning up at the house. We'll get into this in a moment. The Telegraph has police face questions over possible delay to arrest over Sturgeon's home. The Guardian goes in a completely different angle with royals took 1.2 billion in private income from estates. We're going to get to that in a minute as well. Financial Times has Ukraine ready for Crimea talks with Kremlin if counteroffensive succeeds. The Mirror, you can end this cruelty now. What's stopping you? And the Star has boffins. You don't need a brain after all. Well, that's good news, isn't it? Those were Thursday's front pages. So, kicking off with the Daily Mail, what are they leading with, Josh?
Well, the big one is, of course, Sussexes still won't say if they'll be at the coronation.
That's a massive story.
What is going... Just tell me. You know what I mean? Like, every day I wake up sweating. I just want to know, just so you can put me at peace. Stop teasing me like this.
Oh, that's what the sweating is.
Yes.
What did you think it was?
Also, what's quite terrifying is that you know that I sweat when I wake up.
Well, yeah,
Did you turn over and go, Josh, why are you sweating?
Well, I didn't want to share that with the viewers, but you've gone there. We do live close together, as everyone knows. But
well, why don't we focus, rather than your sweating, on the main story on the front of the Daily Mail?
Well, I'll tell you why, Andrew, because it's a tricky one.
OK.
Here you go. Is this real reason? Is this the real reason? Is this...
Yes, headlines, Josh,
Is this real reason? Is this real reason why Sturgeon walked out? Now, we're talking about now... police rocked up this morning at Nicola Sturgeon's house and her husband's house. Now, because this is an ongoing investigation, there are certain... We're proper journalists, as you know, as the viewers know. So we have been informed that if you ask things as a question, then legally it's all OK. So here we go. Did they turn up to get Peter Murrell, her husband?
Well, I will answer that because Murrell has been released without charge.
Did he get released without
No,
charge?
he was released without charge. We can categorically state that.
OK.
You're being overly cautious here.
I know, we just don't want to get in trouble with the authorities here.
Well, what I would ask about this, I mean, of course, these photos were all over the internet today.
Were they?
Yes, Josh, they were. You're going to annoy me tonight, I can tell. Very, very dramatic, and it's just the latest in a sort of problems for the SNP. I mean, really, there's a real sense of schadenfreude from all of the various people who have been anti-SNP for a while. This coming off the back of now Humza Yousaf in charge of the party, that could be a bit of a disaster. What do you think, Nick?
Was it dramatic, Andrew?
What is Schadenfreude?
So, yeah, we've just got to stick to the facts, as Josh said. We have to be very strict. So, they arrived at 7:35 a.m. Sturgeon apparently had... That is a fact. Sturgeon had no prior knowledge of it. And you can see the paper's also struggling a bit because they've gone with scouring the back garden. The officers opened a small shed and a large plastic storage chest. So that's what we do know, Josh.
They own a garden.
But as for your wider question...
But they did bring a tent. Sorry, you've got analysis to do.
Well, Andrew was asking me a wider question about... What was the wider question, Andrew, that we're allowed to talk about?
I mean, it just feels like the SNP have had a lot of bad luck lately.
They've had a bad time. They lost their leader, famously.
Yes.
Now there's this. And now they've got Humza Yousaf, who's probably the worst politician in Britain. So
well, there's that.
That's a bit
but, of course, the Daily Mail is asking this question because a lot of people thought...
And that's confirmed, by the way.
A lot of people... Yes. A lot of people thought that Sturgeon walked out because of the mess she got the party into over the gender-critical
Isla Bryson.
Although there were rumours at the time
because of the ongoing
things going on.
Investigation.
Yeah, exactly. And also the police turned up with 2 spades.
2 spades.
I thought you were going to ruin it right at the end. Did they, though, Josh? Are you sure?
I think they definitely... I saw 2 spades, so we're going to go with that.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to this next story, which is a bit safer. This is the Financial Times, this one.
Yeah, this is safe. This is just nuclear war, Andrew.
Yeah, this is fine. I'm much happier with nuclear war, believe you me.
They've gone with Ukraine ready for Crimea talks with Kremlin if counteroffensive succeeds. So, and I'm a bit of a layman, not an expert on the war. All I know is that Putin's the good one, who's saving us from
for goodness sake.
Saving the world from the decadent West. Is that wrong? Is that wrong?
Matthew Sweet's going to clip that.
For people who don't know, Matthew Sweet, someone who writes long threads about GB News when he disagrees with someone.
He's an excellent journalist. That was my Putin point was satire there, guys, but a little bit of satire there, Matthew.
Yeah, Private Eye won't get it, unfortunately.
Who won't?
Private Eye.
Oh, yeah, they're not so much of a fan of me these days. Anyway, we'll get to the story, Andy, don't worry. It's very important, actually. Kiev, as I still pronounce it, is willing to discuss the future of Crimea with Moscow if forces reach the border of Russian-occupied peninsula. And so this is new because they haven't been open to peace talks for a while. And this comes from Andriy Sibir, which may well be the pronunciation, deputy head of Zelensky's office. And he's saying that they might be open to peace talks with the Kremlin if this happens. And this is great because it makes it less likely we'll all be blown up.
And that's very important. It was always going to have to be a diplomatic solution from the looks of things. This was otherwise just going to rumble on and on. But as a lot of analysts have said, you need a diplomatic solution that makes Putin look like he's achieved something because his ego won't sustain it. He can't go back to the country and say it was all a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Ukrainians were happy at the beginning to talk about Crimea because obviously it's been the 2000s, but they've sacrificed so much now. You actually have the majority of the country who don't want to hand it over, which makes sense. They don't want to give anything up now. Yeah. And that's what Putin's pushed into, the people in Kyiv. I call it Kyiv.
You call it Kyiv. You say Kyiv. You say Kiev. It's like that song, Tomato and Tomato.
Yeah, let's call the whole thing off, which is the whole idea of this.
Why don't we call the whole thing off?
I also say Barcelona.
But you don't say Barcelona.
I go to Barcelona and Madrid.
So your principle is just being annoying, basically.
And Kyiv.
Do you say Gstaad?
Kyiv is silly.
I don't even know what is Gstaad.
It's a place where they ski.
Oh, God, no. Gosh.
Okay, anyway.
That's too elite for us, Andrew.
Yeah.
We don't ski.
You really showed yourself. Is that where you guys meet?
I don't ski.
No,
I don't ski. I go to Bognor. I go to Bognor if I'm lucky. All right, let's move on now to this one. This is the next front cover we're looking at. Is The Guardian. And they haven't gone with the SNP story. They've actually gone with something completely different. The royal family.
Yeah, revealed in yellow. Royals took $1.2 billion in private income from estates. This investigation that they've been carrying out shows that... This is really funny, though. Investigation shows King Charles and the late Queen's takings grew 16-fold in Elizabeth's reign. Well, considering that she reigned for pretty much ever... Yeah. And inflation, and I'm not surprised that the takings increased 16-fold. I would have surprised it'd be about 1,000-fold.
Also, why is this such front cover news? I mean, the basic scoop here is the royal family are rich. Yes. I kind of knew that. And I can see that this is them kicking the boot into the monarchy and saying, why are we paying so much in taxpayers' money for the monarchy? But the truth is, those debates about whether we should be funding the monarchy are not to do with an ignorance on the public's part about how much money they receive. We all know that they receive a lot of money from the taxpayer, and we all know they've got a lot of money of their own.
But
why will this help?
What we don't know is any specific numbers here, and we don't know exactly where it's all coming from, and we don't even know how much they spend on how much we spend on security, for example.
So the issue is the secrecy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of secrecy, and this has been embedded over arguably they're saying the Queen's reign and before, and wills you can't have access to wills. So it's very opaque, and it seems like the Guardian, they've sort of gone, we've been looking and it's really hard. This whole article is like how tough it is to find stuff.
Right.
And then they go,
so they're not actually revealing much. They're just complaining.
Yeah, basically they're like, we've really tried hard to do a big story about this.
Nick, would it be so bad if the royal family were a bit more transparent about their finances?
Well, I feel this is the Guardian sticking the knife in after the Queen's death. They know the royals are vulnerable now. They're kind of whining that they don't have more access. They're saying that the responses from Buckingham Palace boil down to ask someone else, work it out for yourself, you have no right to know. But then why would you invite the Guardian, knowing that they're sort of joke newspaper? Why would you care about letting them know anything, in my opinion? But then...
So they should let the Daily Star do it.
They should let the Star do it, but also... The royals are also quite hard to defend. It's not like I'm staunchly defending Prince Andrew or necessarily our woke king or Harry, obviously. And now William has even let us down by hiring disgraced tyrant Jacinda Ardern for some sort of climate nonsense job.
Well, she's out of a job. She needs some help.
I know, but it's making it hard for me to defend the royals. So I'm not necessarily keen on our new woke royals, and I'm also not keen on the Guardian. So
I had you down as a bit of a monarchist.
Well, I sort of am for the institution, but they keep making bad decisions. So obviously, I was a fan of our great Queen, as most people were, and I'm a fan of the institution. I want a proper monarchy, not a what's the term? I've forgotten the term. Meaning we have a constitutional one. What's the other one? That's like an absolute monarchy. That's what I want.
But then it depends on who you get on the throne. Who you get?
Yeah, I want it to be ruled by a sort of just absolute king who's harsh but fair.
You want
maybe me. What?
You want a despot, don't you? Really? You want to be ruled by what they call a benevolent tyrant.
Yeah, as long as he does the stuff I agree with.
That's interesting. You say he.
Yeah, it would be
very
he.
interesting.
Very
interesting. And there have been some dodgy kings throughout history, so be careful what you wish for, Nick Dixon.
Yeah.
Anyway, finally, bit of nonsense now from the Daily Star.
Because that was serious.
That was really serious. Yeah. What's this one about? Big picture of a brain.
Yes.
Boffins saying you don't need one.
Boffins, you don't need a brain after all. And they've got a little Dominic Raab there saying, I've never doubted it. And
that's unfair.
They seem to have a bit of a... Yeah, they've got something in for old Raab.
It's got nothing to do with the story.
And that's really mean.
And what they're saying is that dimwit sea anemones, however you pronounce it, it's a weird word.
Anemones.
Yeah, exactly, Andrew. Which have no brain but can still learn and adapt, according to boffins who do have big brains. So they just learn anyway. And this makes sense to me because, for example, with humans, we have the enteric brain, as it's sometimes called, in the gut. It's a sort of separate system. And I've always thought that's much more... we're going to learn in future that's actually much more complex than the cerebral brain, I think. And that's... When we talk about gut instinct, there is science behind that. It's got all these nerve endings. It's very, very complicated.
I think you're talking out your gut.
Thank you. So they don't necessarily have that even. So maybe we're learning from completely other parts of our bodies that they can learn without a brain, Andrew. That's the takeaway.
I mean, this doesn't... I mean, the Star are spinning this, because sea anemones don't have a brain, we don't need a brain either. I mean, that strikes me as bizarre.
And that's the serious news that they're coming.
That's what they're going at. That's what they're doing.
Well, it's interesting, but it is interesting, and like you're saying, that we're talking... Because this is... All they really have is, like, a nervous system.
Yeah.
So the idea that instinct can be kind of remembered somewhat, that's what it's suggesting, is... I know, it's interesting.
Maybe we don't need it. They say that the smarter you are, the more prone you are to depression and dwelling on the futility of existence. So, actually, I'd rather be a sea anemone.
That's why I'm so happy.
There we go.
Didn't want to say it.
That is all we've got time for in this part, but do join us after the break when we're going to be talking about why we should let drag acts into the classroom or not, why women get paid less than men or not, and the vote to abolish Ofsted in schools. See you in just a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle. We're looking through Thursday's newspapers. I'm joined by Josh Howie and Nick Dixon, and we're going to kick off this section with The Times. Josh, and hopefully some good news for equality.
Indeed. Labour welcomes UK Equality Act review. Now, this is Kemi Badenoch. She said yesterday that it was going to be referred to the EHRC to make sure that what does sex actually mean when it comes to dealing with the protection of women and people who have the gender recognition certificate. And there's a bit of confusion there.
Yes.
So now they're going to go, it's biological sex where it needs to be.
So what's interesting about that is a lot of activists online are saying, oh, look, they're redefining the Equality Act, but surely it always meant biological sex.
Yeah, it did until they came along and went, no, well, women could be anything, basically.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So they're just clarifying what the existing...
Exactly, just to push back against that.
Yeah.
Labour, who put out a tweet last week on Trans Visibility Day, day 356 of the year, or 2 or whatever, they put out a thing and one of the things that they said was that they were going to bring in a ban, if they get in a ban of full conversion practice, which is very worrying because that would mean that affirmation would be banned, i.e. someone goes in and says, I'm a boy or I'm a girl, and they go, yeah, you are. And if you say, well, let's talk about some other issues, then you could arguably, the case would go... Right. So the point is, Labour's a bit all over it, even though they seem to be understanding that, as I've said before, 50% of the population are women, so they sort of go, well, maybe we should start focusing a bit more.
I mean, Starmer said to the Sunday Times this week that there would be no rolling back on women's rights if they were in government. He said the lesson from Scotland is that you can't take the public with you on a journey of reform. If you can't take the public on a journey of reform, then you're probably not on the right journey. Is it the case, Nick, that Starmer is kind of seeing what happened to Nicola Sturgeon and has kind of worked it out, that actually... at this point, you have to clarify what sex means and not pretend you don't know, which is what he's done in previous interviews.
He says that this week, but then every week he says something different. You think he's rolling back on it, now he's reaffirming it. Starmer's thing is to try and say nothing until he wins the election. This is his big policy. And here, you look what he said. Clarification is a good thing. I mean, is this a bold statement? It is the most ridiculous statement.
How could the opposite be true?
We will look closely at what's brought forward. He's saying absolutely nothing, so I don't trust him to sort this.
Is it because the Equality and Human Rights Commission have come in and they've now said, actually, it's really important that we clarify this?
It could be, yeah. Hopefully Starmer will do the right thing in it. I just don't know, because he seems to... He'll say something like 99.9% of women don't have penises. You're like, what about the last little percentage there? So none of them have penises.
He's almost there, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's getting
only
close.
0.01%.
Yeah, but the thing is, that 0.1% is a
penis.
massive difference, because that's what it's... You know, as you just said, you know, in Free Speech Nation, it's not a gotcha question. Either you can answer the question honestly or you can't. And he does. Now, a few months ago, it was 99%. Now it's gone up to 99.9. It doesn't matter if every week he progresses 99.9999. It doesn't matter. No, 100% of women don't have willies.
Yes.
That's where he needs to get to. And that is a massive shift to get to that point. And he's not there yet.
Basically, accept the penis, Starmer.
Yeah,
that's what we're saying.
And he, you know, he could say, oh, we're going to protect women's rights. If he can't accurately define what a woman is, it means nothing.
But this is... Go on,
to me, a lot of the problem stems from the Equality Act itself. All sort of wokeness. Sunak said here, it's allowed every kind of woke nonsense to permeate public life. Every time you hear something really stupid, it seems to go back to the Equality Act. The only good thing about it is occasionally you can use it to hoist leftists by their own petard, where you say, well, that's against the Equality Act.
But you need to be able to protect people in the workplace.
Of course you disagree, you're a big lefty. But the thing is, Well, you said a lot on the story. I'll just say mine.
You don't believe in equality?
You say the whole thing.
OK, but you don't believe in equality?
No, I don't believe in the Equalities Act necessarily because it's, like, for example, it reduced Christianity, some would argue, to sort of just another religion along with any, like, Scientology. It doesn't, no good seems to have come from it. I don't agree with equality either, by the way, no, because it's a leftist, collectivist...
No, but you don't believe that there should be protection for protected characteristics, being a woman...
I do think being a woman...
Being a religious of some, whatever your religion is.
So, for instance, if someone was fired for being gay, that should be illegal, presumably.
Yeah, that should be illegal. But
that's the Equality Act, then.
Well, why does it seem to cause so much trouble, then?
Because people don't know what it means anymore.
Because this one little thing, everything else was defined, being gay, you know, being Jewish, being Christian, whatever it is. But the problem was that then some activists came along and said, we're going to totally throw what women means out the window.
Right, well, they do need to protect the spaces for women. I just want to say, lastly, there's people like Joe Moore on Twitter saying that they're trying to victimise a vulnerable minority, distract from their own failures of government. That seems bizarre to me.
I think we can safely ignore pretty much everything that Jolly Moorman's got to say. Anyway, we're moving on now to The Telegraph. What have the teachers' union said about drag acts? What's this about? This one's for Josh.
Invite drag queens into schools, say teachers' union. So this is the NEU, and they've just put out a thing, and one of their speakers, they've been meeting this week, having their big conference, and basically blamed Rishi Sunak for the murder of Brianna Gray, or at least implied it.
Really?
And then immediately sort of was pulled outside and went, oh, no, I didn't mean that, or whatever, even though, of course, that's what this rhetoric sort of pushes.
Yes.
And exactly that's what she meant at the time. Rishi Sunak is supporting the far-right attacks on drag queen Storytime and the murder of beautiful... I mean, an absolutely ridiculous statement, and that's the thing, is that's all they've got is these activists, is they just make these outlandish claims and people just go along with it to feel good.
So I'm very confused about this because it's the National Education Union, which it should say, which is the largest teaching union in the country. They're saying we should be inviting drag queens into schools, but the reason they're saying is because it would help to challenge the heteronormative culture that dominates education. What have drag queens got to do with heteronormativity?
Well, this is it. What exactly are they trying to teach kids?
Yeah, but in addition, does the heteronormative culture really dominate education? It seems to be the exact opposite. It seems to be woke nonsense dominates education these days.
I suppose if we say that all heteronormativity is that people assume that people are straight unless they hear otherwise, then I suppose that is the case pretty much everywhere because most people are straight. I don't see why drag queens get involved, why they're getting dragged in, if you don't mind the pun, because all that is gender non-conformity in terms of dress and performance, right?
Well, yeah, but it's an issue. No one has a problem with drag queens, but it's only when it's applied to children. No one understands why they have to be performing for children. But this claim is very bizarre. In the Times, from someone in the unions that says that Sunak's supporting the far-right attacks on drag queen Storytime, and he's saying hate and abuse is fine, and we won't stand for this. So it's now far right not to have drag queen performances for children. Isn't that kind of absurd?
But the problem isn't drag queens, is it? The problem is sexualised performances by drag queens in front of children.
Yes.
And that is a distinction I think we should make.
Absolutely. But what is the challenge specifically? They're saying they want to widen the view. How does a drag queen widen a child's view on the world? So we should also invite nappy fetishists in or something. I'm not saying they're the same, but the point is, showing children that there are different types of families. Sure, that there are gay families and lesbian families and single families, whatever.
But they see that anyway, don't they? They see that on TV and...
Well, that's what I'm saying. But they're saying, we need to bring these drag queens in to widen their view.
It's a weird cultural obsession at the moment, this drag queen thing. It really is bizarre. Anyway, we're going to move on to this one. This is an equality story again. Women still paid less than men? Nick? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, this comes from The Guardian, so I'll just say that straight away. Women still paid less than men at 4 out of 5 employers in Britain, and it claims that in almost half of companies and public bodies, male employees are paid at least 10% more than their female counterparts. Now, the question is it for the same jobs? And that's the bit they kind of leave out. And in some cases, it may even be for similar jobs, but then we've got the question of salary negotiation. So it's kind of been shown many times that this pay gap is a bit of a myth, but The Guardian clings to it, and they think that they think it's real. They imply that men are just getting paid more for the same job, which is not true. And then they assume it's a good thing. And they say, at the current rate of progress, it'll take more than 20 years to close this gap. What I mean is they assume that this is something that we desperately need to be doing. Now, my take is that Actually, it may well go the other way because women are discovering, as people like Louise Perry have written about and calling herself a so-called reactionary feminist, that actually women don't necessarily want to compete in the corporate world. They may actually go back to wanting to raise families. So I don't think it's going to go like the Guardian thinks.
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because in all the countries where they've implemented measures to try and redress gender parity, such as in Scandinavia, women tend to choose more traditional roles, right? So when people have more freedom, they tend to be more segregated by gender. Josh, is this an issue? Because these kind of articles lead to the kind of myth that men and women are paid differently for the same work, which has been illegal for 5 decades and doesn't happen. But what they're talking about here is that because of the choices that various people make, women are more likely to go part-time, things like that, then you get a gap in average earnings. But that's not necessarily a sign of endemic sexism.
No, and it's what, as Nick says, it's not at all mentioned in this article, and that's what's so frustrating about it, is, look, you're a newspaper, be honest about this stuff. Bring in some actual facts and some variation to show why the things are the way that they are.
I mean, it's possible that in some corporations, you know, they don't hire women because there is an ingrained sexism within that particular company. I can see that that could be the case.
Yeah, and that should be dealt with. Also, they're also saying that 3% of companies, women are paid more than men.
Yeah.
So
well, that's
maybe we've got to deal with that.
Because women in their 20s, they actually earn, on average, more than men in their 20s.
Yeah, so if a place that hires lots more women in their 20s, like Hooters or whatever, they're getting a lot more.
Yeah, thanks for that one, Josh. OK, we're going to stick now with schools here. Guardian's got a story about Ofsted inspections. I remember Ofsted inspections, Nick, as a teacher. They were pretty scary.
Yeah, they can be, and of course that has tragically led to the death of Ruth Perry, and the Headlines Teachers Union calls for abolition of Ofsted inspections after death of Ruth Perry, and she committed suicide because she was so distraught about her school being downgraded to inadequate, which is the lowest rating. So it can be very brutal, and I understand that. But in terms of what they're doing, though, is using that to try and reform it. And then, you know, and they're saying, oh, you know, we need to, it's leading to harm, it needs to be dealt with immediately. But does it, is the question. I've been looking into it, and I work with Toby Young on our Weekly Skeptic podcast, so I know a lot about this because he's an expert on schools. And
which podcast is that?
So it's called The Weekly Skeptics, one of the fastest-growing podcasts in the country. Check it out.
Check it out.
But
nice.
Not using this as an advertiser.
No, but it was just relevant. So so the point is that Ofsted, it may be OK, but giving a kind of overview of the school, but actually it has no real correlation with grades. So if your school is outstanding or good, there's no actual correlation with better grades. That tends to be more tied to IQ and certain factors that just suggest the kid's going to be smart. So it doesn't do much. Although it might be sort of nice to have, it might be OK, and they might want to revise the language to make it... What will probably happen here is they'll revise the language to make it sound less damning. Yeah. You don't want to be called inadequate. But actually, Ofsted doesn't do that much anyway in terms of actual grades.
But that's not helpful. I mean, we do need to have some kind of rigorous assessment system for schools. All experts in suicidal ideation tell you that you shouldn't say that one thing caused that event, right? And I think to
sure there were other issues
exactly.
as well.
Then, you know, we don't know what's going on in anyone's head, and it's a bit dangerous to leap to these conclusions. But also, when it comes to this, you do need a system, don't you? And of course, it's stressful. You know, whenever you're assessed in your workplace, it's stressful. But the solution isn't just to abolish
No, absolutely. But I think that they're sort of the NEU is basically saying that who is holding Ofsted accountable. Right. As well. And then because there are sort of supposedly 2,000 schools were given the wrong grade, so maybe no institution is above being looked into, and certainly on the back of what happened. But one interesting point is that Ofsted doesn't factor in any of the financial stuff, how the schools sort of allocate their funds, and with underfunding, that could have a massive impact on, of course, what they offer and what...
I'm a bit mistrustful. I mean, the National Education Union is like an activist body now, and
it
always
well,
it seems to be...
Their new leader, who starts in September, is like a proper far-left crank, calling globalise the Intifada and all this, going in marches.
And one potential positive of Ofsted is that it holds schools to account just by existing, so the existence of some sort of regulatory body that's going to give you a grade, even if it's not as harshly phrased, does something. That's the idea.
OK, well, we're going to stick with the theme of education now. Thursday's Express, Oxford University. Josh.
Yes, Oxford College accused of cancelling St George's Day in row over a Eid al-Fitr feast. So this is interesting. I was listening to this on the Weekly Skeptic podcast.
Yes.
My favourite.
Thanks. You're one of our many listeners.
My favourite podcast. And yeah, this is one of those, as Lewis Schaefer might say, somewhat of a non-story. It's one of those annoying articles where you kind of get to the end and you go, OK, gosh, all right. So basically, there's this St George's Day feast, and you read it and you go, oh, my God, this is obviously some ancient tradition, and they meet every year, and the dons get together and all that fancy stuff you can imagine going on at Oxford. You probably went there, didn't you? Do you go to Oxford?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
You probably went there,
I think
you're
if you're listening
kind.
to your classical music...
Oh, my goodness, this has nothing to do with me.
Anyway, the point is, and then it goes, and then you find out that actually it just ran for 3 years.
Yeah, this is Magdalen College, and that, you know, you're right, the article implies that it's a big ancient tradition. 2016 they started.
And then finished at 2019.
I mean...
So, yeah, and now they're basically holding this feast for the end of Eid. And,
it's not that big a deal, is it, Nick?
It is, and I'll tell you why. At least it's somewhat of a big deal, which is that what we're doing in our culture now, we become so sort of self-loathing. It's one thing to say, OK, there are different cultures and they're all valid and we sort of embrace them. But what we're doing when we cancel St. George's Day and we have Eid only, we're actually saying that other cultures that are traditionally, you know, obviously Islam is part of England now, but we're saying that our traditions are actually inferior to other traditions, and it's a weird self-flagellation.
But they're not using the Eid celebration as a replacement for the St.
Just happens to fall on this day.
Well, that's how I read the story.
No, but I would agree with you. If this had gone even longer than 20 years, I would be 100%. I'd go, that's enough to be a tradition. But something that ran for 3 years.
No, but it's the tradition of St. George's Day itself, not of their specific.
Well, I definitely think St. George's Day we should take more pride in it, and it should be celebrated further. I agree with that.
Well, you know, St. George was Turkish. It's just foreign nonsense.
You sound like one of those Twitter people.
Yeah, well, I don't really mean it. I'm just saying it to wind you up.
He is on Twitter.
Anyway, coming up after the break, how the UK is tackling fraud, how the gambling industry is winning over MPs, and bad news for people who live in a polluted area, which is most of us. See you in a minute.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. And Channel 4 causing controversy now with a programme that basically proves society's in decline, doesn't it, Nick?
Yeah, really weird. So this is Channel 4's new body-positive show, Naked Education. And as the Mail is saying here, it sparks fury as the programme shows adults stripping off and standing fully nude in front of children. And I tweeted about it. I said flashers used to have to buy a raincoat and hang around at a park all day, but now they get a Channel 4 series. Hey! So this is progress. I think we have a clip of it as well, do we?
We probably will when we get to... We'll probably be able to show it, but well, not the full nudity, obviously. But the advert simply shows...
That's just me. That's not it. I'm not a flasher.
And Josh,
to clarify,
does this concern you that Channel 4 are? I mean, they've according to the advert, unless the advert is misleading, they've set up a scenario whereby there are children in the room,
14 to 16-year-olds,
14 to 16-year-olds, and fully grown men get naked in front of them.
Yeah, I don't see why that's necessary. You can talk to people about that stuff, or at least say that there are different types. There's an argument out there that with social media and Instagram and all the other stuff, that there is a sort of, which has always been the case, really, these kind of ideal body types of the time. Yep. And certainly that can have an impact, I think, on
I think it's healthy to
children.
Teach kids that, it doesn't matter what you look like, that's fine. But this is a clip from the advert.
There's some kids.
But why do they need to do this specifically?
And then the kids are shocked because they're being abused by some people. You shouldn't show...
Is it legal?
They're 14 to 16.
Well, I'm guessing it is legal. Because I believe they had their consent, and what they said is afterwards they said they had support throughout. So I don't know if there's a therapist there.
Because you can obviously sex education videos and stuff, you see nudity and everything, and that's perfectly legal. But when there's actual physical people in the room, I would have thought there was a different standard there.
The range. I think the only way this happens is that people like Channel 4 live in this sort of weird ultra-liberal bubble. Because how would this be allowed to happen? Any normal person goes, stop the madness, but no one did that.
Yeah,
because if it's a live painting class, you have to be over 18 for that. That sort of thing. And that's not sexualised at all.
Really, that's interesting. What my art teacher.
Yeah.
Well,
you got to be over 18. You're sure?
Yeah, I don't want to raise those memories.
Oh dear. The commissioner says she wants. I want populist shows with scale. Territory-wise, I'm very open as blah blah blah.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a movement of breaking down safeguarding that has been going on in our society probably for the last 5 to 10 years. Who benefits from children feeling that it's okay to be naked in front of
it's very
adults?
strange.
It's wrong.
OK, we've got the Times next. This is a story about how powerful the gambling industry has become now. Ascots and concerts. Nick, that's you.
Yeah, how the gambling industry tries to win over MPs. So apparently hundreds of thousands of pounds have been spent to influence reforms, and the reforms under consideration are limits on online stakes, affordability checks for punters, ban on sports sponsorship, etc. And the idea is they sort of try and work with MPs and try and get things in their favour in a slightly questionable way. And other questionable things, like William Hill was given a 19.2 million fine for a series of widespread and alarming failures, which does sound quite alarming. And it points out here more than 400 people take their lives because of gambling problems. So I'm against safetyism in general. We saw it reach its sort of apotheosis with COVID, and it was completely deranged. And in a way, why don't we just... Is it that bad to have Hamlet, the mild cigar, on TV like we did when we grew up? It was only mild. But why is gambling allowed to sort of slip through the net? Cigarette adverts are banned, cigars are banned, but it's just, if you watch football, it's like gamble, 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 the whole thing with Ray Winston.
And it can be, I mean, I've known gamblers, it can be really devastating, but of course, ultimately, there is personal responsibility there. You have
but then you've got addiction issues. So, and they're saying, there's an MP who's going, it's only like 0.3% of people, and actually, supposedly it's more like 3%. That's a significant chunk of people whose lives essentially get destroyed. The question you're saying is why? The answer is, I believe, the revenue that the government picks up. It's when a company like William Hill gets fined 19.2 million, and this is like a multi-billion-dollar industry. Who's the interest here? I don't want to get all conspiracy or whatever, but that's essentially what it is. They should have tougher... They were bringing in, supposedly, much tougher law in terms of making sure that people who were gambled, you could see that they had enough money to gamble with, background checks and whatnot. Supposedly, a lot of it's been watered down.
Well, a lot of it's the internet now, isn't it? Anyway, so like anyone can gamble online and...
But I think you'd have to, hook up to your bank account and just make sure you have the money, and also to stop you get someone went in and spent £20,000 within, 10 minutes or something.
OK, well, look, we're going to move on to the Mirror now, and the days of the UK being a paradise for fraudsters looks like they're behind us. Josh?
Nah, it's going to go on.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, this is like a dent in the ocean.
Right.
1% of those crimes actually go to court, let alone be, found guilty. But police raid dozens of homes and arrest cyber crooks selling personal info for just 56p.
That seems very cheap.
Well, that is. Someone like me who doesn't really have any money and is just quite boring, that I'm a fixed 56p person, but you, with your solvency and whatnot, I'm imagining you were probably like a £5.10.
I'm offended by that.
You think your personal data's worth more?
I think someone's stealing my identity.
Okay.
I've got a pretty good identity.
I'm happy being 56p. I'm totally fine with it. But yeah, they've gone in there. They've arrested a couple of people. Obviously, this is an international ring. There's FBI. There's the Dutch police. It's called the Genesis Market. So anybody could just sort of rock up, even if you're not supposedly going to do criminal activity. People can do it to find this information out. But of course, it does make criminal activity okay, and you can get your people's Facebook details, Amazon, PayPal, Netflix.
So much of our information is out there. I mean, I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often. Nick, I didn't know that this is all taking place in the National Crime Agency in Grimsby. I didn't know they had it.
Yeah, it's all in Grimsby, Andrew.
Yeah.
I've seen them. Your identity's there. And it's a lot more than 56p, though. Yeah, yours is going for about £7. Yeah, I'd want to be 156p as well. The only part that shocked me was this guy, Rob Jones, the Director General of the National Economic Crime Centre. He said, yeah, the problem with this is you don't even need to know a criminal. You can just completely self-start and set this up as soon as you want. I'm like, why are you telling them? That was my only problem with it.
OK, the Metro now. Dormant cancerous cells getting a wake-up call here thanks to polluted air.
Yes, they've given this story to the person with crippling health anxiety. Starting to think that the producers don't care about my health problems. So this is air pollution can wake up dormant cells that cause lung cancer, even in non-smokers. This is a new thing to worry about. And a certain amount of people, people die even if they haven't smoked. And apparently it can... I can't even read it. Can you do it?
Well, the problem with these kind of stories is
horrific.
you get these all the time. I mean, to be fair, it's a pretty extensive study. They've looked at more than 400,000 people. But there's often these articles that say, you know, if you eat this, it's carcinogenic. Then I saw an article saying oxygen is carcinogenic. I can't give up oxygen. You know, we can't... There's a limit to what we can do.
And we live in London,
there is a limit, but it says if we can stop cells from growing in response to air pollution, we can reduce the risk of lung cancer. Or, of course, we could just stop the air pollution.
So actually, really, the takeaway from the article is let's sort out the pollution issue.
That's which is fine. Essentially.
Which is a reasonable
thing. 6,000 people die a year from lung cancer who've never smoked. I don't smoke. I don't want to die. If this is going to help fix that, then great.
And that's the only thing that, on the other side, the only thing I wondered is this Metro climate propaganda?
Well, it could be.
Look at Nick. He's what?
Health anxiety versus
Metro propaganda, environment. Oh, I don't know.
It is tricky.
Yeah.
It is a tricky one. OK, well, coming up after the break, why our memory is unreliable, what the key to intelligence is, and why our memory is unreliable. See you in 3 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians
to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's newspapers. Now, Guardian, something about memory? I can't remember. What is it?
Yes, very good. Human memory may be unreliable after just a few seconds, scientists find. Now, the
seconds?
Well, here's the thing, that may be, because they did some experiments with letters and mirrors and blah, 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 and then it turns out that people remembered the mirrored letters as normal way round, essentially.
So is this because, like, we all forget stuff that happened a while ago, but generally speaking, the stuff that just happened, you're not like a goldfish where you lose it in a couple of seconds.
No, but what I think is more interesting here is, do you know that thing where you speak and then someone repeats back what you just said, but totally different to what you just said? And you're
like they didn't hear you?
Yeah, because the people bring their own interpretations of what they expect to hear or what they think they're going to say.
Yes.
You wait a minute, I never said that.
Why think you're being rude? Like they say, well, I just said that and you weren't listening. It's like, well, no, maybe they were, and they've just got this condition.
Yeah, so this could be what it is more so. I think the gist of it is when you're expecting something different, or then you will maybe more likely to misremember.
Yeah, you'll fill in based on your prior knowledge. Go on.
Preconceptions. Because I've been having this recently, I'm worried about this, when I'm reading a book and I'm like, I can't remember what happened on the previous page.
That's normal.
They find spot.
What? Oh, they do find spot?
Yeah.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, they solved the Da Vinci Code. I totally disagree with what you just said, Andrew, if I remember it correctly a few moments ago, when you said that we can forget stuff in the distant past. But remember, Nia, I'm completely the opposite. People say to me, what did you do yesterday? No idea. But if you're asking me about something that happened when I was 8, someone annoyed me when I was 8 years old, it's all there.
Oh, yeah. Bitterness I can hold on to forever.
Oh, yeah. But I suppose the takeaway of this is, just human memory unreliable. We recreate narratives of our own.
Mine's reliable.
Absolutely.
OK, well, The Express now, some good news for vegans.
I like the way you say vegan, What about your vegan? Let's do the vegan stuff.
I imagine vegans being Teutonic.
Don't mock the executive producer. So the Express has lab-grown meat about to get tastier with cultured fat, which is the kind of fat I have, to make it taste like the real thing. And this is part of the pro-fake meat propaganda. They want us all to accept Bill Gates' synthetic meat, which I never will.
But this isn't fake meat. They're growing actual meat.
It's fake meat, Andrew.
Real.
And and they've put in 36%. They found that when meat has 36% fat, that's like the perfect fat ratio.
Yum.
So they're trying to recreate that, but it's all total propaganda for this terrible. And fake meat gives you cancer as well.
Why don't we just eat vegetables, Josh?
No, they're bad.
I never thought I'd say this, but I'm missing Lewis Schaefer.
What?
For this story.
Lewis Schaefer, one of our panellists who likes to eat nothing but meat.
Obsessed with meat.
Only eats meat.
He would know. Now, I'd like him to have the meat test and see if this tastes anything like
but Lewis eats like raw cats.
Well, exactly.
He's
the best guy to...
If it helps, I can tell you what it'd say. It'd say, this is a Nan story. And then it'd say, because, you got to eat meat and watch out for gout, he would say.
This is a
and then it'd
story.
say the death of love, and no one would know what he meant.
The amount of pollution that are caused by livestock, this is a huge deal. If they can get this meat and it tastes good and it has the right texture and all the fat...
Yeah, what's wrong with feeding the poor,
You will eat the synthetic meat and you'll be happy. This is all WEF propaganda, Andy. They want you to eat the bugs.
What end?
Because they want us... It's climate stuff, but they want us to live miserable lives, eating bugs,
but if it's
freezing
not,
cold
this
houses,
isn't bugs.
eating synthetic meat. It's the same thing. Synthetic meat in your freezing house, in your 15-minute city,
I'm going to put a stop to this
15
debate.
minutes
to watch The Matrix.
Oi, we're moving on. Right, times now. If you want to prove you're intelligent, don't be a sheep. Josh.
Indeed, as Nick maybe just disproved it. I don't know. We'll see. Key to intelligence is refusal to follow the herd. Researchers find. So basically, they're actually following genuine herds here. That's the joke of the story. Hoofed animals, and the ones that are kind of left to the side and don't have any mates, they can problem solve and get food.
But they get eaten as well.
That they get eaten. Oh, I see.
They do. Like if you're in a herd and you stray, much more likely to get
maybe
eaten.
that's why hoofed animals never sort of went up the evolutionary ladder.
Maybe.
But it turns out that this is what's quite interesting. Arabian camels and goats were the very successful, and they solved this food issue very quickly. But 6 seconds. But guess what? Gazelles took 5 minutes. Those stupid gazelles.
Stupid gazelles. And the thing is, Nick, this isn't surprising, is it? That people who think outside the box, think a bit differently, that they're smarter. I wasn't referring to you. You
definitely got the food.
Of course. I've always thought of myself as the goat of independent thought, and it turns out it's the Arabian camels and goats. Technically, I'm the camel because the Arabian camel had an 86% success rate, 69% for the Arabian goat. And of course, it makes sense. People like me against lockdowns, against the dodgy jabs that you all took, against the face masks.
Andrew just said that you get killed off, though.
We may, but we also are innovators, and you need us.
Yeah, but Nick, there's a lot of people who think like you. A lot of people who think like you and just respond to each other.
No, but look, Andrew, those embedded in a herd like you guys were always more likely to ignore something out of the ordinary and just follow the behaviour of those around them, and that's dangerous because it might not be the right thing.
Being a contrarian can be herd-like if everyone's doing it.
I'm not, though. I'm sometimes not contrarian.
So have you got an opinion that no one else has?
Loads.
Like what? Literally no one else, including your Twitter followers.
Women shouldn't be allowed to vote.
OK, let's move on now. Telegraph now. Prince Harry in bother, this time not his fault, Nick.
What's it? Harry, oh yes. Sex toy firm wrapped over inappropriate Prince Harry advert. So Love Honey was ordered by the Advertising Standards Authority not to display this controversial billboard, which had a ball gag and an image that said, "Silence is golden, Harry." And they're not wrong, but the way that they displayed it was a bit controversial because this was at Clapham Junction and everyone could see it, and kids and stuff.
But it wasn't in a sexualised context, was it? It was just a picture of a ball.
Well, it was a joke. It was a metaphor. It was saying, "Stop talking, Harry. You're ruining your life and everyone around you."
Yeah, that doesn't seem too unreasonable. And it only really happened because a member of the public complained.
Yes,
inevitably.
Probably someone who'd watched Channel 4 and then knew what a ball gag was. Right. I didn't know what a ball gag was until I watched Pulp Fiction. Oh. That's the first ball gag I saw.
I don't believe you. Right. We're going to do one more story,
I think.
Yeah, right. OK, Daily Star now. Is it rude to continue sitting in a seat that someone else has booked?
Yeah, of course not. I mean, look, of course it is. Bloke confront. I like. Why just say Matt? Bloke confronts woman sitting in a booked train seat, but people say she shouldn't move. So this person, Boris Becker, not that Boris Becker, rocked up. Yeah, came up and said, "Oh, you're in my seat," and she was like, "No, right." And then as she got up, a woman said, "No, you shouldn't move. You don't have to move." It's
no,
like,
you should move. There are rules.
That's the whole point. It's booked. It's reserved.
Also, if you've booked a seat and they don't move and you sit in someone else, you probably sat in someone else's seat and then they get...
It's like a domino effect.
It's very, very complicated, and I wish we had the video, because the video depicts... The guy comes up and says, "This is seat 103, this is my seat." And she goes, "Oh, can't you just sit over there?" But then she buckles and does move. But it's very... The question is, now, yes, you've booked that seat, so you should be allowed to have it, but it looks like she might be sat next to a friend. And if there are other seats and she sat next to a friend, you could... And they're unreserved.
That turns into a big moral conundrum.
You could just do that. And it wasn't clear if there were other seats, and it wasn't clear if that was her friend. So probably she should have just given up the seat because he did book it.
Well, then look, we're not going to solve this. A real moral maze situation. We'll have a look at the video online and make a decision. OK, well, the show is nearly over, but we do have time just to have another quick look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail is leading with, "Is this the real reason why Sturgeon walked out?" The Telegraph also runs with the Sturgeon story. "Police face questions over possible delay to arrest over Sturgeon's home." The Guardian, they have an investigation into the royal family, revealed royals took £1.2 billion in private income from estates. The Financial Times, Ukraine ready for Crimea talks with Kremlin if counteroffensive succeeds. The Mirror has You Can End This Cruelty Now, What's Stopping You, and The Star, a silly story about how we don't need a brain after all. Those were Thursday's front pages. That is all we've got time for. Thanks ever so much to my guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Join me again tomorrow, where I'll be joined by Josh and Lewis Schaefer. And remember, if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat of this show, stay tuned, because The Breakfast Show is just after the break.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the early hours of this morning, Donald Trump responded to his arrest at a New York courtroom yesterday. We've had time to reflect. Tonight we debate and ask the question, is Trump being wronged? We go live to Bexhill-on-Sea in East Sussex, where there was the protest going on against the proposed migrant camp on the same day that a barge is announced for Portland. We'll ask about the numbers. We'll ask, within a few weeks, where on earth are they all going to go? And joining me on Talking Pints, former jump jockey, BBC racing commentator, and a man who's got the top tips for the National. In a few days' time, Richard Pittman will join me on Talking Pints. But before all of that, let's get the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, yes, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Good evening to you. The Prime Minister has defended plans to house asylum seekers on a barge in Dorset, claiming it will save the taxpayer millions of pounds every year. The government's confirmed a deal has been signed, despite the threat of a legal challenge from the local district council and Tory MPs. The Bibby Stockholm, which can accommodate around 500 people, will provide basic but functional facilities and around-the-clock security. Amnesty International's labelled it ministerial cruelty, which is obscuring the government's mismanagement of the asylum system. But Rishi Sunak says it's a fair approach to tackling illegal migration.
We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today. That's going to save the taxpayer money, reduce pressure on hotels.
Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances. Detectives have been searching the party's headquarters, collecting evidence, and a cordon has been set up outside the couple's home. Police Scotland has been looking into the spending of around £600,000 set aside for the independence campaign. Mr Murrell resigned as the party's chief executive last month, and Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf says they're cooperating with the police.
People will have questions, there will be some concerns. Our party membership, of course, will have concerns too. So what I can commit to is party leaders that we want to be absolutely transparent. That's why I asked NEC to agree to a review around governance and transparency, and also to make sure it has some external input, which I think is really, really important.
21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 children in Walsall who were younger than 12 when they were abused. West Midlands Police say the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have been held over the past 15 months, with reporting restrictions in place until their conclusion. The offenders will be sentenced next month. And the chair of the blood inquiry says compensation for victims should be extended as some family members remain unrecognised. Thousands of patients were infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated products in the 1970s and 80s. Last year, the inquiry recommended victims or their bereaved partners should receive an interim payment of £100,000, and it's now urging the government to widen the scheme to include orphaned children and parents who lost children. TV online, DAB+, radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Nigel.
Well, after those dramatic events yesterday that we covered live here on this show of Trump being arrested and charged in a New York courthouse, it was his turn to respond, which he did at 1:15 a.m. our time in the ballroom at, of course, Mar-a-Lago, Florida. He spoke for 25 minutes. Here are just some of the highlights.
And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. From the beginning, the Democrats spied on my campaign. Remember that? They attacked me with an onslaught of fraudulent investigations. Russia, Russia, Russia. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax number 1. Impeachment hoax number 2, the illegal and unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago, right here. And just recently, the FBI and DOJ in collusion with Twitter and Facebook in order not to say anything bad about the Hunter Biden laptop from hell, which exposes the Biden family as criminals and which, according to the pollsters, would have made a 17-point difference in the election result. And we needed a lot less than that, like about 16.9. It would have been in our favor, not my favor, our favor, because our country is going to hell.
Well, that's a flavour of what Donald Trump had to say. The country is going to hell. They've been against me from day one. Endless investigations. And, of course, he mentions Hunter Biden. But what I said to you yesterday was that former American presidents have done some dreadful things, but they've always been pardoned. This is, to remind you, the first time ever a serving or former president has received criminal charges. So, is he? Is it a case that Donald Trump has finally been caught out for his crimes and his dishonesty? Or is Trump being wronged? And I have to say, it is the completely unequal application of the law in America that says to me there is something very wrong here. It is the fact that the prosecutor, the man himself, Alvin Bragg, in New York, was elected as a Democrat prosecutor with a promise that he would get Trump. And there are other possible indictments coming from Georgia and elsewhere, again, all from Democrats. I think the American judicial system has an absolutely fundamental flaw in it. It is massively, overly politicised. It's not serving a good purpose anymore, and I worry that people will lose complete faith, trust and confidence in it. And if they do, well, they may well then decide to take things into their own hands, which is not what we want. The reason we have democracy is so that we can agree to disagree, but to do so in a peaceful and relatively civilised environment. Certainly within the Republican Party, Trump's status has improved hugely. He was marginally ahead of Ron DeSantis in the polls for who should be the next presidential candidate. He is now miles ahead of Ron DeSantis and anybody else that could potentially enter this race. Is Trump being wronged? Give me your thoughts and your views, please. Farage at GBNews.uk. And we're going to have on, over the course of this programme, we're going to have on people, we're going to have on lawyers, we're going to have on commentators. But what I have noticed, and we saw it last night with people coming onto this show, what I have noticed is there are many on that wing of the Republican Party that don't particularly like Donald Trump. I'm thinking particularly of the Utah senator and former presidential candidate Mitt Romney, and people like Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer, who was on this show last night, a lifelong Democrat voter, opposed to most of Donald Trump's policies, but saying that what is happening here simply isn't right. It's not within the spirit of the American Constitution. It doesn't observe due process, and that it's a bad thing for America. And I tell you what, what's bad for America is also bad for Western civilization. All of that to come later. Next up, we're going to go live to Bexhill in East Sussex, where a planned meeting of the council has been cancelled for fear of protests. But the protests are taking place anyway. Anyway, we'll be in Bexhill in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
As we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So, some of your thoughts. Has Trump been wronged, is the question that I asked you. One viewer says, Trump being wronged is small potatoes compared to what this actually symbolises. The Dems' obsession with Trump will embolden America's enemies. Well, that may well be true. And he goes on to say, remember the completely avoidable, unnecessary Biden-led disaster in Afghanistan. And I repeat the point I made yesterday. Great civilizations and empires through the history of mankind tend to fall because of conflicts from within rather than conflicts from without. And I reckon in Beijing yesterday, they were laughing their socks off. Simon says, no, he hasn't been wronged, but doesn't add any more to that. Deborah says, shameful what they are doing to Trump, definitely a witch hunt. And Stephen has a constructive suggestion, which I do not think is going to be taken up. Biden has said he won't come to the coronation. But Stephen suggests that Trump should represent the USA at the coronation. I don't think Prince Charles really wants that, or King Charles rather really wants that, and I can't see it happening. So, a big day on migrant stories. Before we go to Bexhill, let me just show you some footage that I had not seen before. It's Albanian footage from a beach in the north of France. Just have a look at this. So last year, when I was in the channel, we managed to film people throwing their iPhones and their documents into the English channel. Nobody had seen that before. What you're seeing there are people, and that is Albanians, because it's Albanian music and words, and they're burning their rucksacks. They're burning all their ID documents before they make the crossing. And this is the point. It isn't just large numbers of young males coming into the country. It's large numbers of undocumented young males who we can't check for previous criminal records or anything else. Now, Ray Addison is our South East of England reporter. Former HM prison North Eye, just outside Bexhill, has been put down on a list to take 1,200 young men. There was due to be a council meeting tonight about it. It's been cancelled, but Ray Addison is there with a crowd of protesters anyway. Ray, tell us, I mean, I understand the meeting's been cancelled, but still people have turned up.
Yeah, the town council may have cancelled Nigel, the meeting this evening, but that hasn't dissuaded residents from coming down here to the centre of Bexhill to express their views. Now, the North Eye site is only about 2.5 miles away from here. It's had an interesting life over the last 30 or so years. It's been an RAF base, it's been a prison, it was used as a training facility by the United Arab Emirates government, and of course now the plan of the Home Office is to house 1,200 single male asylum seekers in that accommodation. It's upset a lot of the locals. They feel like they haven't been consulted on that. And of course, that meeting that was supposed to go ahead today was cancelled because of fears that residents would confront councillors and other officials here. However, locals very much wanting to have their say. Pretty good turnout, well over 100 people here, and a peaceful protest with people expressing their views. Now, Jenny Smith is a local resident. She's helped to organise today's event. She joins me now. Jenny, why have people been meeting here today?
They're very angry that North Eye is being proposed as a site. We weren't informed about any of this. Mr. Merriman said he only knew last week. 1,200 single males aged 18 to 30 2 miles up the road in a place which is a quiet seaside town full of old age pensioners and mostly old people. And they will be allowed out at night till 11 o'clock. If they don't go home, they just get a phone call to ask why.
Now, of course, the Home Office is saying that there will be security in place and there will also be proper facilities and resources for these people, so that there's plenty for them to do within the accommodation. Why are you so concerned?
Because they will be allowed out and they will roam the streets. The Little Common being their nearest town, which is a very small village full of old people, and there is nothing there for them to do, so they will probably go down there and drink or whatever. There's just nowhere around here for anyone to do anything.
Now, the area where they're going to be accommodated, it's a residential area. It's been used by families and children as almost a play area as well. Is that one of the big concerns? It's so close to young families, and perhaps a better location should have been sought?
Yes, it's actually in the middle of nowhere. It's about 1.5 miles out in the countryside. There's a garage nearby, a local bus service, but there's very little for anyone to do. People are scared that their children are going to be locked in because they won't be allowed out. Things will have to be locked up. People will have to lock their houses up. Nobody knows quite who is going in there because they're all illegal. So.
Now, we've heard there's already been an impact on house prices. Been speaking to people who've had offers withdrawn or reduced because of this announcement. Is that a factor as well?
Yes, my friend owns Bexhill Estates. They've had 3 withdrawals from vendors from London in the last week. House prices will plummet if they know this is going to go ahead.
So what's the plan then? What are residents saying here today they should do to try and prevent this from happening?
They want to try and find a legal loophole before this actually goes through properly. Hugh Merriman is meeting with a few lawyers tomorrow who hope to try and put their case towards him. Just a protest to show as many people are concerned about this, to make people listen to us, because nobody seems to know what's going on.
Jenny, thank you very much for joining us. Nigel, of course, the Home Office is saying it does have a legal obligation to provide safe accommodation to destitute asylum seekers. And, of course, they're saying as well this site could actually have some benefits for the local community. It could help to create new jobs, and it could also bring new investment into the area.
Yeah, they always say that. Ray Addison, thank you for that report. And thank you, Jenny, for joining us there. Jenny's the sort of woman that the Times newspaper will describe, of course, as being a far right-wing thug. But clearly she's not. And no site is suitable, because nowhere is this wanted. I genuinely thought last week that we could save RAF Scampton. I thought the business plan that was in place was good enough for us to help to stop it. But no, it's going to go ahead. And today it's been announced that, yes, Portland in Dorset is going to get a barge, a big barge.